food-related standards is a topic of growing complexity, both in terms of what public sector is doing and the private sector. And to try to demystify it, let's think about a sort of a spectrum where you start at the very initial end, where standards essentially are sensory. You taste, you touch, you smell, and that's what we do in the supermarket, but also that's a lot of how food is traded around the world, is just a very sensory thing. You sort of move up, and then you have clear grades of different produce that are recognized. You move further on, and then you have some of the invisible stuff, things that require testing. That will show like the microbiology of the product or whatever. You move further along, and then you're getting standards related to production practices, meaning how is the crop produced, what are the environmental aspects, what are the social aspects. And you move further on from that, you have all that package, plus you have a very rigorous system of assurance, where you have third-party certification and whatnot. Different markets are associated with different levels or stages of standards. Everything from the very localized grain market or wet market through to more formal markets in a developing country, whether it's a supermarket or a large wholesale market. And then you have it sort of at the international level. Again, you have different gradations. Some of them are looking primarily just for quality, and some of them that are looking that are worried about the invisibles and the whole production process. It varies a lot between commodities also. Some of the things that are more dangerous, you have standards that are really focusing more on the intrinsic property of the product. Things that are not dangerous to a consumer, quality is usually the main aspect. So in terms of development assistance, you really need to be looking at your target, who the farmers are, who the firms you're working with, where are they currently serving in terms of a market, and what's sort of a realistic aspiration level for upgrading. It shouldn't be you start with sort of disorganized farmers whose practices are unknown and they don't record anything, and try to get them into the most advanced, most technically sophisticated market that requires the most paperwork and assurance. You want to move them gradually up the chain. And so in this respects, in many ways, our work on standards has focused too much at that sort of extreme end, where you have the most difficult challenges, because it involves a relatively small number of small farmers that are facing that leap, that need to leap. Where in the domestic market setting, regional market setting, much larger numbers of farmers can attain those standards technically, and it's a matter of the process of organizing them, having them adopt the needed technologies, and then the commercial relationships. And we can affect much more farmers, probably more sustainably, by working at sort of this lower end of the standard spectrum. This also leads us to ask what roles government should play in this area. And I think we can separate, on the one hand, issues related to plant and animal health. This is about pest management and about disease control. There tends to be a need for a stronger government role on that side, to be doing sort of pest and disease surveillance, reporting. This is what's sort of required of governments as part of the international system, because pests and diseases can move. They can walk across borders. They can fly across borders. They can move with products that are sold. So to the extent to which those risks are not managed at home, they can affect others. So we tend to put more emphasis on capacity of government with regard to plant and animal health. When it comes to food safety, it's a mixed picture between the private sector and government. Ultimately, farmers and private companies, they're handling the product, they're producing the product, they're moving the product. They have a major responsibility for assuring that it's a safe product. And yet, government has complementary and very important roles. In terms of the production process, there's roles related to regulating of certain inputs, say on pesticides. Some of the most toxic pesticides maybe no longer legal, so it's regulating that market. It's in the sort of the licensing and inspection of firms along the channel that they're meeting some, complying with some basic laws on hygienic practices and not using illegal additives or dangerous additives. And if it's an export commodity, then often the trading partner on the other side wants some degree of assurance of that product and production systems have been monitored. Now that can come from government or come from the private sector. Some developed countries actually require government. So like in the case of fish selling to the EU, you need what's called a competent authority, which is a public agency that has the capacity to go and inspect fish processing units to say, yes, the source of water for ice is clean, yes, the hygienic practices. For other commodities, you don't necessarily have that competent authority that's required by the buying partner. So it does vary quite a bit by product. Something that's under-recognized in our work is attention to sort of consumer awareness in the countries we work. So working with consumer organizations, which is a big thing of what, say, the U.S. government does. It supports a lot of consumer-related advocacy things because that voice is quite important in keeping the private sector on track and knowing that there's a cost if something goes wrong. In developing countries, consumer groups tend to be very weak. So there is a role for government to work with consumer groups to build their ability to understand the risks, the sources of the risks, and be able to communicate it in a way that doesn't scare the public, but actually is constructive.